Welcome to Coffee with Kristen. I am very happy to be here. I missed Monday. Don't ask me why, because I don't really. I did a little emergency kind of thing with a client, and I didn't realize I wasn't going to have a way to get back to my Coffee with Kristen, so I missed it. It was a bummer. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. I'm real happy to have you here. Okay. I thought today we'd talk a little bit about duality and the masculine and the feminine. As you know, I always do this based upon synchronicity. And for some reason this week I have had to talk about the energy of the masculine and feminine in a couple different ways. And so I thought I would share that with all of you. And so let's look at that. We have in this life, let's talk first about duality. Then we'll talk about the masculine and the feminine as part of that duality. So in this life, we learn everything through a dualistic model. We know there's a left because there's a right. We know there's an up because there's a down. We know there's an inside because there's an outside, etc. And so that duality gives us a way to learn and know this existence, right? We experience in a triadic model. We know past, present, future, right? Earth, self, sky. So we learn in or experience in that triadic model, which is where the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit came from, because it came from moving that triadic, triangular kind of experience back into the spiritual or religious form in this case. So when we look at the dualistic model, it allows us to know that where we're moving is to a monolithic place. So where we experience fear, there is an absence of love, and where there is love, there is an absence of fear. And so if we're moving towards a monolithic model, we're moving to a place where all of this fear and this hate and the divisiveness that we're experiencing right now is going to kind of pitch and until it disintegrates, so to speak. And once it does, then this energy of a higher love experience is going to step in, and it's going to be much more of a unity and harmony. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, although I certainly wish it would, because I get real tired of the hate and the I gotta be right nonsense. Anyway, so we're really looking at a shift right now. And so let's talk about the masculine and the feminine. That is the energy that runs through this life as well. We see it in all of our romantic languages. We have a masculine form and a feminine form. In most of those languages, we don't in American. And then when we communicate, we see that there's a difference between the masculine and the feminine. So your masculine energy is your aggressive energy, which is the going against. It's not, beating each other up, but it's the going against. Your feminine would be the passive, which is the receiving. It's not being the doormat, it's the receiving energy. So if the pitcher in baseball is the male energy, then the pitcher throws the ball to the catcher, who is the female energy, and receives the ball. But much like life, if you could only be one or the other, baseball would be a very, very short game. But we're not. We're both. So the catcher then stands up and becomes the male energy and throws the ball back to the pitcher, who becomes the female and receives it. So we have the male and the female in us all. Ultimately, we want to see a bit of a balance in that expression, because it is balance. Where the male energy is more linear, the female energy is more circular or process-oriented, male energy more solution-oriented, female more nurturing, more creative, more structural on the masculine. So you have this duality in life, and it is important to understand the yin and the yang, where this all comes from, the black and the white, then there's the gray. But the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, how do they find that perfect unity and balance? And so oftentimes in our life, if we can understand, even in our partnerships, where we have this this tussle. I don't know what word I'm looking for here, where, you know, two people really are kind of struggling with how to get things right because some person isn't doing it their way. But then we realize that one side of the relationship is very creative and this is, you know, putting the processes together, getting things going, coming up with ideas. And the other side of the relationship is great at implementing and doing and solutions and things like that. And instead of fighting over who's right and which way things should be done, what if we understand that the masculine and the feminine is a beautiful blend of the two, and that we are to bring them together? And so all of a sudden we start to look at one another through eyes of complement versus opposition. And again, if we can bring in our compassionate curiosity, which you guys hear me talk about all the time, then all of a sudden we're so much more able to embrace this dualistic model, which means we start to unify it. And as we start to unify it and work in harmony, we can now transcend it. So there's a lot going on there. The duality in the masculine and feminine energies does rest in balance. So we have very, very real to this time in life, we have a much larger number of gay and lesbian and transgender people around us. And why is that? Well, there can be a physical answer to the transgender, because seriously, with what we're doing with all of our food, there really is a gender imbalance that they are finding through research. But there's also a higher spiritual realm that says there's a balance here. There's something going on. So is there always going to be a male and a female? I don't know. I'm not trying to pose that question today, but we're seeing a blend, a blur of that clear distinction. And even in myself, I have worked very hard to find that balance of the male-female energy, of the masculine and feminine, where sometimes I think very linearly and sometimes I think very creatively and processing, right? And I do my best to see, okay, where is that balance within me? We all can have that balance of the energy within us. To honor both sides of yourself is important. To know that you're stronger on the feminine side or the masculine side is also to honor yourself. And it is important to know the difference. This difference in energy also shows in our communication. So when we're talking about somebody who's strong in their male energy and another person strong in their female energy, you're going to have a communication difference. You know, very often the male energy is going to be solution oriented and the female energy is going to be process oriented. Now, there are a whole bunch of other characteristics as well. But when you start to understand that, instead of fighting over the silliness of a factual story that really isn't very factual because of our perceptions, but if you start, arguing over that, and, one person is getting frustrated because, look, here's the simple solution, and the other is like, but I'm not looking for a solution right now. I'm still working it through in my mind. Well, I don't understand why you have to do that. You can just come up with this solution. This will make it go away. But it doesn't go away if the other person is still processing it, right? To make it go away is to put closure to it. The person who's solution-oriented thinks the solution is the closure. And for that person it is, because they're more male energy leaning in this case. But the person who's more feminine energy leaning needs to process it to bring closure to the situation. So let's start to look at that simplicity. There is a list that I will post on Instagram and Facebook, since I'm on both, and it is a list of all of the masculine versus feminine characteristics, and it is out of a book that I will also cite that talks about some of the Jungian information. So it's a nice comprehensive list to really open up your mind and to think about it. And it'll be funny for you to see what some of the feminine is, where the feminine can be more of the emotional and the masculine more intellectual, all of a sudden then we start to get in and we're like, wait a minute. And yes, indeed, you'll see that it really does start to make sense how we balance out with the masculine and feminine. And when we look also at that, we look at the blurring of it. How does it truly unite? So in the symbol of the yin and the yang, we see it united in a circle. And in that circle, we have the black and the white to distinguish, but it becomes a symbol of one, two parts that make a greater whole. So as we look at this life, you will see the same is true, that when the masculine and the feminine actually blur and become one, we start to really grasp the concept that life is a circle. And so again, going back to how I suggested in communicating, if I know that I'm more on the feminine energy in this case, and I know my partner is more of the masculine energy in this case, then I understand, oh, okay, you're looking more toward this direction, I'm looking more towards that direction. What happens if we put them together? What happens if we bring them into the solution together? Well, that takes the two of us looking in the same direction. It takes us standing side by side. It takes us knowing that we are compassionately curious about what that could be. So, today we talked about duality, but in the way of the masculine and feminine energies. And so I brought it into communication, I brought it into relationships, but I also brought it into individuals, that we all have both. And it really is about how we find that balance between the two within ourselves. And where there is an imbalance, maybe we're more laden with feminine or more laden with masculine energy, to honor that. Any of those three situations, honor it, know where you stand, and then see if you can understand where the person across from you is resting. And then we brought, of course, the compassionate curiosity into the equation to allow us to communicate more in the balance of the masculine and the feminine, rather than being in conflict over the differences. So I thank you all for joining me today. This was wonderful, both on Facebook and Instagram. I wish everybody an absolutely wonderful day. And I hope that as you go through this day, you really learn to honor yourself and how you present. Know your experience and keep that compassionate curiosity going. I look forward to talking with all of you again on Monday. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me, and please visit KristenBomas.com, where you can easily access all of my social circles.